of a building, you know, library shots of buildings, you know, no real information in the picture. You know, this is what a bus looks like. You know, I know what a bus looks like. I'm not getting information from the picture, but they have to show pictures. The web is truly multimedia. You can choose whether you show moving images, still images, interactive graphics, text, audio, and how to mix them together. You've got a lot of flexibility there. And I think we're only just beginning to understand how to do that. I think one of the things you need to learn when you're learning how to build your own audience and drive traffic to whatever content you do is how to use these different tools effectively, and which one you have. Tool bags are bulging now. We've got so many tools in there. One of the challenges to work out understanding what they're good at and what they're not so good at, which ones you use for which bits, and how you combine them together to build something really powerful. And actually that's, I think, one area where there's still a lot of interesting new learning to do. That's one of the things where your generation of journalists has a lot of new discoveries to make. How do we really effectively combine these different tools together to make to make the whole thing work really well and make compelling experiences?
I read an article today on the BBC News that suggested that online journalism is now more popular than newspapers in the US, and it also suggested that, like going back to the television, it suggested that television was there still at the top. Do you think with like the increase in user interactivity and user-generated content that eventually online will be at the top?
I think so. I think it gets complicated because I think they all start to blur together. So, so if something that looks like a traditional TV news report, but it's streamed over the internet, is that television or is that internet? The format looks like television. It has to be delivered through a pipe into your home, via TCP, over IP protocol. So it's over the web. But so I think we'll see those blurring together. Similarly with background I'm from, print. I think that as we start to see, because print still has some value. So we still publish magazines. We haven't closed any of our magazines yet because to keep them online only. I think that will happen over time. But print still has some unique characteristics. It's portable. You can read it on the tube in a way that you can't easily read. You can't access the web. It's got a wide field of view. It's got good quality paper. It's got better reproduction quality. And one of the things we're trying to understand is how you make use of those strengths of print, play to its strengths, rather than trying to do something in print, which is better done these days on the web. But I think over time, that sort of pull out your pocket plastic screens become mainstream and move out of the lab and into the real world. And so you can pull out something which has a lot of characteristics of paper. It's portable, it's big, but you touch the screen here and it's today's newspaper, and you touch it somewhere else and it's the map to show you where you're going, and you touch it again and it's the novel you're reading. I think, so on the one hand, I think that will eventually destroy, in all intents and purposes, paper, in the same way as, in effect, you don't see vinyl records anymore except in very specialist shops. I think to all intents and purposes, print will disappear. But actually, what replaces it, that stuff on a plastic screen, may well look a lot like traditional magazines, because we've got 400 years experience on how to lay out pages of that sort of size. So I could imagine one of my grandchildren, if I showed them a copy of New Scientist today, they would look at it and they would know what it was. They'd say, yeah, that's a magazine. But then they'd start touching it and they'd say, oh look, it's broken. The pictures aren't moving. When I want to get more information on this, I can't. It doesn't do anything. It's like the batteries are dead. It's not working anymore. But I think, so I think what we'll end up with will be a sort of a hybrid. It'll be delivered electronically. I think that's pretty much a given in the long term. But maybe it will owe a lot to its predecessor, and it will still look maybe in some ways like some of the media that we're more familiar with.
You were talking about the tsunami and how somebody made like just an amateur clip and it had the same amount of downloads as like professional. Don't you think that's something negative for us as journalists who are we're seen as the same standards as an amateur, and when we get paid jobs, don't you think there's going to be more of a competition
yes.
as competing with amateurs?
Yeah, definitely a challenge for journalists. We can't, I think that in the past there's been far too much mediocre or frankly downright bad journalism, and people have been able to get away with it because there was restricted access to the means of communication. It cost a lot of money to print newspapers, so most people didn't have the ability to publish content and get it to a wide audience. And so the ones that got jobs in the big newspaper groups and magazine groups and so on, irrespective of how good they were, maybe in some cases, managed to keep their jobs. And therefore, you can't get by on that. You have to show that you're adding value, you're doing something that warrants the money you're being paid that goes beyond what any amateur can do. So I think there's a challenge for journalists. I still think there's a role there. I mean, again, going back to the pre-print days, when sitting around a campfire in a tavern, everyone had a voice, as they do now on the web. There was still a role for professionals in that business, and what do professionals bring? They bring a number of things. They bring time. It's a very pragmatic thing. Other people have other day jobs to do, so they can't devote much time to it. If you're doing this as your job, you devote the time to it. Hopefully they bring an aptitude and skills. That means they're better at it. And other people, some of them because they've naturally got the aptitude to do it, while other people just because they've gone through training and they've had a lot of experience, so they get good at it. Part of it is about mindset. When one of our journalists is taking part in a space like the forum, where their voice is one of many voices, part of the difference that distinguishes them from any other contributor is that they feel responsibility for making the whole experience work well, whereas the individual is just there to get their personal benefit from it, whereas part of their role is to make that experience work well. And I think it is more challenging for journalists. The challenge is on us to prove that we're adding value. But I don't see any reason why it won't still be the case that going forward there'll be roles, especially where I think one of the reasons why it looks so challenging now is the things I mentioned earlier, the problem of terrible recession and the new ways of monetising content are still at a very early stage and haven't really had a chance to mature. I think once you start to see big money being made out of the audiences generated, then people who do that really well, who are very good at doing the right sort of things online, that bring the right people of engagement, bring them with their eyes wide open, paying attention, I think those people are going to warrant large salaries because a lot of money will be made out of those audiences. And so it's worth, people who are really good at it will be able to command good salaries. But you have to be good at it. I mean, it's interesting now, one of my friends writes an amateur theatre blog, and it's interesting, there's a whole community of amateur critics now who, in many cases, do a much better job than the professionals doing on the newspapers. And that community of professionals are getting quite snotty about it, because we're the official critics. They're these upstarts who are, but actually, who are doing it on an amateur basis. But actually, their voice is, they have the ability to reach large audiences just as much as the professional critics do now. And often, not always, but often, they're doing a better job than the professionals. So I think it is, we can't take it for granted. If you've got the job title, it doesn't automatically mean you get the audience. One of the things when we get our journalists to go out and start blogging, often it hits them right in the face. That I'm not. No one's paying attention. The traffic on my blog is really low. Why is it? Don't they know who I am? I'm the defence correspondent of Flight International. I'm the whatever reporter on New Scientist. Why isn't anyone paying attention to me? You haven't got the right to the audience. You've got to win it. You might have an advantage because they see the brand New Scientist or Flight International Farmers Weekly, and they maybe give you that gets you the initial attention, that gives you the benefit of the doubt to start with. But at the end, after that, it's down to you. And if you're not doing something that really adds value, if you're not doing a good job, then you'll lose out to people who are doing the job better.